Standing Committee on the Status of Women. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of June 23rd, 2022, and therefore members are attending in person and remotely using the Zoom application. I would like to make a few comments for the benefits of our witnesses and members. Before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. For those participating by video conference, click on the microphone icon to activate your mic, and please mute yourself when you are not speaking. Those in the room, your mic will be controlled as normal by the proceedings of the verification officer. You may speak in the official language of your choice, and interpretation services are available for this meeting. You have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either floor, English, or French. And for those in the room, you can use your earpiece and select the desired channel. So there's floor, English, and French is there as well. If interpretation is lost, please inform us immediately. Although this room is equipped with powerful audio systems, feedback events can occur. These have been extremely harmful to our interpreters and have caused injuries and continue to cause. Although this room, the most common cause of sound feedback is an earpiece worn too close to the microphone, and we therefore ask that all participants to exercise a high degree of caution when handling the earpieces, especially when your microphone or your neighbor's microphone is turned on. To prevent incidents and safeguard the hearing health of the interpreters, I invite participants to ensure that they speak into the microphone into which their headset is plugged in, to avoid any manipulating the earbuds by placing them on the table away from the microphone when they are not in use. A reminder that all comments should be addressed through the chair. And for members in the room, if you wish to speak, please raise your hand. And for those participating by video conference, please use the raise hand function, and myself and the clerk will take note. And in accordance with the committee's routine motion concerning connection tests, I would like to inform you that the committee, all the connection tests have been completed and are done. We are now going to continue with our menstrual equity study, and today we have a great panel with us. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted on Thursday, April 27th, the committee will resume its study on menstrual equity in Canada. And I would like to welcome our panelists. I recognize that today is a little complicated with votes. There are supposed to be some bells, and at that time we'll have to suspend for just a second, decide what we're going to do there, but we'll ensure that we get as much time as possible with all of you. So I'm going to begin. All of you will have 5 minutes, and what I'm going to do is I will introduce you, take your 5 minutes, and then I'll introduce the next panels. So we would like to hear from our first witnesses, and to begin, we have Iris and Arlo. We have Laura Edmond, who is the founder and president. Laura, go right ahead. You have 5 minutes.
Madame la Présidente.
Madam Chair of the Status of Women Committee and committee members. Iris and Arlo is a new social and environmental impact company offering healthy, environmentally friendly menstrual products. We offer, among other things, natural, organic, and plastic-free single-use menstrual products, as well as reusable menstrual products such as period underwear. Menstrual equity is at the heart of our mission. That's why, for every product sold, we donate menstrual products to disadvantaged people through partnerships with organizations across the country. We also facilitate access to menstrual products with our corporate offer, through which over 130 organizations have committed to offering menstrual products in their bathrooms. And finally, because we firmly believe that education is the key to equity, we offer online educational material and workshop conferences on periods. Now, some findings. Over the past year and a half, my team and I have spoken about menstruation to hundreds of people across the country. Business leaders, school administrators, organizations, student associations, government institutions, and the list goes on. From all these meetings, a number of things became clear. First of all, everyone who has or has had a period knows what it's like to have to cope when they find themselves in a situation where they don't have the necessary menstrual products. It can happen in public, at work, or at school. And it's an uncomfortable and embarrassing situation that happens only because sanitary facilities haven't been thought out to accommodate menstruators. Secondly, the subject of menstruation makes many people uncomfortable. It's time to break these taboos and normalize discussions about menstruation. It's essential that everyone can feel comfortable talking about it and asking for help when necessary. 3. What's more, it's clear that most of the people we met aspire to healthier menstrual products, both for their own well-being and for the environment. 4. However, it's important to recognize that not everyone is comfortable using reusable menstrual products, as this remains a very personal preference. What's more, we mustn't forget that sanitary facilities are often not adapted to the use of reusable products, which is a major obstacle on their use. 5. Finally, period poverty is a very real issue. Organizations have many requests for these products, but are not always able to provide them. Now, possible solutions. Menstrual equity is a question of fundamental fairness, dignity, and full socio-economic participation. To achieve menstrual equity, we need to treat menstrual products for what they are, essential products. As with toilet paper and hand soap, access to them must be guaranteed. This requires lasting change and collaboration of many players. 1. So, as with other essential products, we need to ensure their availability to the most vulnerable populations in places like food banks, shelters, and penitentiaries. 2. It's also important to encourage accessibility to menstrual products in public bathrooms and to set an example by instituting this wherever possible. I would also like to highlight the amendment of the Labor Code to this effect. 3. Incentives can also be put in place to encourage this change in most public bathrooms, such as credits for sanitary ware modifications or the installation of dispensers. 4. It would be interesting to work with the provinces to ensure the availability of menstrual products in schools and promote education about menstruation. 5. Finally, from an environmental point of view, it is possible to encourage the adoption of reusable menstrual products by offering subsidies, as several Quebec municipalities have done, and by redesigning bathrooms to facilitate their use. However, since the vast majority of people who menstruate use single-use products, it would be interesting to make more environmentally friendly single-use products available to them. In conclusion, menstrual equity is a fundamental equity issue in Canada. We need to recognize the importance of this issue and work together to ensure equitable access to menstrual products while respecting individual choices and promoting better education about menstruation. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share these thoughts with you today and for taking such a serious look at this important issue. Together, we can make a real difference and create a more equitable country.
So much.
Thank you.
I'm now going to move it over to Monthly Dignity. And in the room, we have Clara Bolster of Foucault. So Foussette, you can tell me how to say that properly. And Haley Newman, a patrician. So you have 5 minutes in total for your opening comments. I'll turn the floor over to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members of the committee, and thank you very much for inviting us to contribute to your study on the study of menstrual equity in Canada. Our names are Clara and Haley, and we're the co-directors of Monthly Dignity, which is a non-profit organization tackling period poverty in Montreal. Our work centers around distributing free menstrual products to community-based organizations that serve clients in precarious situations, delivering inclusive menstrual education, and advocating for free access to menstrual products, and that it be considered a right rather than a privilege. Our team is composed entirely of volunteers, and we are funded through in-kind contributions from manufacturers and donations from the community. We work with more than 20 community partners, including shelters for people experiencing houselessness, women's shelters, domestic violence shelters, centers for newcomers, asylum seekers, and refugee claimants, youth outreach centers, as well as publicly funded schools. In tandem with this grassroots work, we both also conduct qualitative research on menstrual equity, during which we have interviewed people with lived experiences of period poverty, as well as the community organizers, many of them here today, and across the country who support them. Au cours de l'année dernière, Dignité
In the past year, Monthly Dignity has received an increasing number of requests for menstrual products from community organizations, schools, and even individuals. Unfortunately, given the small size and limited resources of our organization, we are not able to keep up with this growing demand. However, this illustrates two critical turning points: a sharp increase in the degree of need within the community, and a growing awareness about issues surrounding period poverty and interest in implementing systemic changes to address them. In Canada, as many as 1 in 4 women, girls, and people who menstruate in Canada have had to choose between buying menstrual products and paying for other necessities. And as you can imagine, food comes first. Although this illustrates a profound problem, the reality is that we know very little about the scope and impact of period poverty in Canada. It's a doubly hidden issue owing to historic taboos surrounding menstruation and the broader issue of poverty. It is also highly intersectional, disproportionately affecting underserved communities.
Stories from folks on Social Security benefits not being able to find room in their monthly budget for period products. We've heard from shelter residents feeling too embarrassed to ask for period products from shelter staff, high school students who miss school every month, people getting infections and rashes because they kept a product on for longer than is considered safe, and folks experiencing houselessness, not being able to find a private bathroom to change their pad or tampon, or making do with toilet paper or rags because they didn't have access to the products they needed. The profound shame and stigma that results from these experiences cannot be overstated. The root causes of period poverty are complex and intricately linked with social determinants of health. However, there are downstream barriers to menstrual equity that present opportunities for action. To effectively tackle period poverty in Canada, we need a comprehensive approach that addresses both immediate and long-term needs while recognizing and adapting to local contexts. Programs and policies aimed at reducing period poverty must respond to the pressing need for menstrual products among underserved communities by reducing financial and structural barriers to accessing these products among those who are most at risk of period poverty. This can be addressed by increasing social assistance funding, subsidizing the cost of menstrual products, distributing free menstrual products in publicly funded institutions, and allocating additional funding for community-based organizations to purchase the products that they need to distribute. Deuxièmement, une éducation en santé.
Secondly, comprehensive and inclusive menstrual education is necessary to reduce the stigma surrounding menstruation. This should be included in both elementary and high school curricula, and we need to engage in public awareness campaigns and advocate for the provision of menstrual products to be considered the norm. In every aspect of these efforts, it is critical to meet people in communities where they are and to actively consider the needs, experiences, and preferences of diverse populations. Menstrual equity is about more than just periods. It's an issue that sits at the intersection of social justice, human rights, gender equity, food security, poverty reduction, education, and so much more. We are encouraged by the committee's interest and efforts to address this important issue in Canada and hope that these discussions will be the beginning of a systemic change. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And moving online, we're going to turn to Moontime Sisters. We have Veronica Brown, who is the lead for the Ontario chapter, as well as Nicole White, founder and lead for Saskatchewan chapter. I'll pass it to you to share your 5 minutes. You have the floor.
Tansei, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nicole White, and I'm honored to be speaking to you from Treaty 6 territory. I'm the founder of Moontime Sisters, a flagship project of True North Aid, and I'm joined today by Veronica Brown.
Miigwech Nicole. While usually in Treaty 13 territory, I'm calling today from Portugal. We are very grateful for the opportunity to appear before you today to discuss the state of menstrual equity across Turtle Island and how this issue is disproportionately affecting Indigenous nations.
In 2017, I learned that it was common for Indigenous students to miss school due to a lack of access to menstrual products. From a simple donation of pads, Moontime Sisters, MTS, was born. It has since evolved into an Indigenous-led national organization working towards period equity in Northern communities. Barriers to access and affordability are amplified for Indigenous nations. Some communities have no access to products at all and need to travel long distances to purchase these essential items with very little variety. A mother from La Ronge, Saskatchewan once told us, I got some product from our local shelter, and me and my girls have never actually had pads before. We just use socks. Since beginning in 2017, Moontime Sisters has grown to include 4 chapters and has partnered with over 100 Northern Indigenous communities throughout the country. We have shipped over 2 million period products to high schools, elementary schools, midwifery organizations, healthcare centers, friendship centers, shelters, food banks, and community programs, ensuring that we are supporting community as a whole, as the medicine wheel teaches us. Most importantly, we work with community. We collaborate with each one to ensure they are being heard and their needs met. We provide them a full spectrum of Moontime products that are specifically requested. We're often asked why we don't send only reusable options like cloth pads and menstrual cups. While we recognize this question is rooted in good intentions, it's also indicative of a colonial mindset that we know what's best for others. Indigenous menstruators deserve not only equal access to menstrual products, but the dignity of choice to address their unique and individual needs.
The 2023 survey completed by Plan International Canada found that, quote, 25% of Canadian women who menstruate have been forced to make the decision between purchasing menstrual products and purchasing other essentials such as food or rent within the last year, end quote. Through our work, we've seen firsthand the disproportionate effect of period inequity in Northern communities. We know that far more than 25% of Indigenous menstruators have been forced to make this difficult decision. We recently partnered with the University of Saskatchewan and developed a crowdsourcing survey to collect information about preferences as well as barriers experienced by people who menstruate in remote Northern communities. We're pleased to share some of the preliminary results with you today. And for your reference, we have provided a copy with some figures in Appendix 2. Our data is not a one-to-one comparison to the plan study, but our preliminary findings are very telling. One key takeaway is that 73% of Indigenous respondents in remote communities and 55% of Indigenous respondents in non-remote communities sometimes or often have issues accessing menstrual products. Relating to the previous question, 39% of responses from those who sometimes or often have access issues say that this is because they are unavailable at the store. 26% of responses say that they have other priority items to buy, and 26% say that they are unaffordable. The survey also indicated that Indigenous respondents in remote communities were most likely to miss work, school, and exercise due to lack of access to period products. Our survey explored product preference, access to pain relief, recycling programs, various experiences while menstruating, and who menstruators are comfortable talking with about their Moontime. Additional data will be released in the forthcoming report.
Thousands of Indigenous menstruators from coast to coast to coast are struggling. While we're tremendously proud of our growth and the amount of support we've been able to provide in our few short years as an organization, we're also deeply concerned by what it means, that the need for our support is vital and it's growing, not declining. In an ideal Canada, all menstruators can bleed with dignity, no matter their gender, location, or ethnicity. We appreciate the committee's time and the opportunities to speak about how period inequity is affecting Northern regions. Thank you for hearing us today and for the government steps towards our collective goal of achieving period equity. Hi.
Thank you so much. And staying online, we have Megan White, co-founder of Period Packs. Megan, you have the floor for 5 minutes. You are muted. If you could start over, you're muted.
All right, now we're talking. Here we go. My apologies. Good afternoon, everybody. Of course, I'd like to express my gratitude to the committee for welcoming me here today and for your zeal with exploring the issue of period poverty here in Canada. It's been a great pleasure of mine to witness the growth of the menstrual movement here, including the recent amendments to the regulations made under the Canadian Labour Code, requiring, of course, free pads and tampons to be made available to all federally regulated workplaces, and the foundation set for the Federal Menstrual Equity Pilot Framework. Over the past 5.5 years, I've devoted my entire life to the cause of period poverty, collaborating with passionate advocates from diverse sectors around the world, many of which are in this room. I've seen both the devastating impact of period poverty on women and girls and the inspiring progress that we have made. However, the reality is that period poverty continues to have devastating effects on the lives of countless individuals. In 2018, I co-founded Period Packs, an Ottawa-based agency that addresses period poverty through a 3-pronged approach of access, advocacy, education. a winning formula, which I'm sure you will hear echoed by many, if not most, of the witnesses at this committee hearing today. In 2018, period packs made significant strides to addressing period poverty in our community. Our grassroots programming distributed over 1 million menstrual products to Ottawa community members through our 36 frontline community agencies. Through advocacy and partnerships, we've implemented 2 ongoing major pilot programs, and we've supported over a dozen institutional level initiatives as well. Our peer-to-peer education approach directly engages community youth, while our over 50 plus virtual workshops reach diverse organizations, including city councils, university boards, high school boards, major Canadian banking institutions, and many social service agencies. Over the years, the need for our services has grown exponentially. We provide products to a variety of frontline services, food banks, shelters, safe houses, public libraries, sexual health clinics, street outreach program, and a tremendous amount of personal deliveries to individual community members. Perhaps for me, the most striking is the work that we do with high school students, where we provide pads, tampons, menstrual cups, and menstrual discs. Providing choice and quality products is foundational to our service. By offering a range of options, we ensure that individuals have access to products that suit their unique bodies, their preference, and their comfort levels. This inclusivity empowers people to choose what works best for them, enabling them to manage their own cycle with confidence and dignity, And it helps us create compassionate, ongoing programming that's informed by the individual. To date, 50% of the products that we have distributed have been in partnership with women-founded and operated Canadian SMEs. These SMEs have played an integral part in addressing period poverty in Canada, not just through partnerships with community agencies like Period Packs, but also by conducting their own high-quality, independent research, funding and designing educational programs, and being on the ground with grassroots organizations working meticulously to truly understand community need and design best practices to address them. Partnering with women-owned SMEs creates a supportive circular economy where grant money and donations benefit social enterprises that are dedicated to making Canada a better place for everyone. These partnerships have demonstrated an intimate understanding of the issue and the ability to efficiently deliver a variety of products at a competitive price. A need for product variation and choice also drove these partnerships. Period Packs' extensive programming has proven that it is simply inadequate to provide only pads and tampons. Menstrual cups, discs, and period underwear are highly in demand in our programming. I take pride in doing this work alongside dedicated advocates from all sectors, including other witnesses here at the committee and everyone present today. I firmly believe that Canada will be well on its way to becoming a leader in addressing menstrual equity and establishing a commendable foundation for the advancement of gender equity. Thank you for providing me with this opportunity and for making it easy for me to proudly share that Canada is building the foundation to be an international leader in this space.
Thank you so much. And we'll now hear from the Resource Assistance for Youth and Isla Banks, drop-in manager. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Hello. Thank you for having me here, and thank you to the committee for the work you've done and continue to do for menstrual equity. My name is Ayla Banks, and I'm joining from Winnipeg on Treaty 1 territory, home and traditional land of the Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, Innu, Cree, and Dakota peoples, and the national homeland of the Red River Métis. I'm speaking today on behalf of Resource Assistance for Youth and the folks who access our services. We also go by RAY. RAY is a multidimensional street-level frontline service organization that seeks to provide services that meet the emergent and long-term needs of youth experiencing homelessness between the ages of 0 and 29. RAY is a nonpartisan, non-judgmental organization underpinned by the social determinants of health that utilizes evidence-based harm reduction practices to support youth in a participant-driven way. Overall, RAY's vision is to end youth homelessness through systems navigation and collaboration with the youth themselves. Specifically, we provide frontline services in conjugation with providing system-based advocacy, education, employment, and training readiness. Our service delivery model is called a hub model, which includes basic needs and a hot meal program, 4 distinct housing programs to meet youth where they're at, an employment and training program called Level Up that bridges marginalized youth to the labor market, as well as access to mental health, primary health, and substance use supports. These programs work together to ensure youth we work with can reach independence and stability in terms of their mental health, physical health, and economic conditions. The goal of addressing each of these elements is to set youth up for success in the long term rather than providing temporary solutions for isolated issues. With over 25 years of experience, we now serve more than 2,700 marginalized and street entrenched youth every year as they transition towards adulthood. My current role here is managing our drop-in space, which sees anywhere from 50 to 100 participants a day. Our folks see more barriers than most, and menstrual health education and access plays an often overlooked but serious part in impeding on an individual's ability to achieve health, growth, and success. When I first learned of this initiative, I immediately thought of my long-standing unofficial appointment with a woman I will call Mary. While she is well over our 0 to 29 age mandate, she has been unhoused for a number of years and turns up consistently once a month in our opening hours before the youth arrive to request pants, underwear, and period products. She will have some sort of garbage bag or old cloth wrapped around her waist in an attempt to hide her ruined pants. She changes in our bathroom, I load her up with supplies, and she quietly leaves. While Mary and I have had this almost wordless system now for a couple of years, I see many variations of Mary throughout the month. Some folks are incredibly embarrassed. Some have been denied entrance to other facilities because of their appearance or odors. Some have been using unhygienic makeshift replacements, leading to further health issues. And some have just resigned to this as one of life's normalities. This should not be a normality. In terms of our participants who may be housed but are living on a monthly basic needs budget of around $150 to $200 a month, or those who are entering the workforce at a minimum wage that does not match the current cost of rent and living, we see the incredibly difficult decision being made on the regular of whether to eat, afford the bus to work, or not ruin another pair of pants, which may be their only work pants. This should not be a decision anyone has to make. Through our work on the front line, we have come to learn that access to free menstruation supplies needs to be more widespread than the front desk of a daytime drop-in center. Every bathroom, regardless of gender designation, should be stocked with free supplies. As we know, not all women menstruate and not all men don't. Due to stigma and taboo, requesting menstrual supplies as a woman can still be felt as shameful. For trans men and non-binary folks, it can be not only felt as undignified, but a way of outing oneself and a terrifying safety risk. Furthermore, on top of bathroom stock, supplies need to be available for outreach workers and other forms of frontline service provision due to the often inaccessible nature of bathrooms for some of our more street-entrenched and marginalized community members. Ideally, these supplies would be more than just a single option as well, as preferences for menstrual products are often affected by important aspects such as one's cultural background, education and knowledge, and even trauma history. Providing access and choice provides dignity and safety. Dignity and safety are crucial to our mental and physical health and overall community wellness. Thanks again for having me.
Thank you so much. So I do believe that there is going to be a vote at some time. I just had her turn on the TV, so there's a closure. So it'd be 30 minutes when the bells do start. But what we're going to do now is start with our first round. So we're going to start off with 6 minutes, and we'll start off with Dominique Vienne. Dominique, you have 6 minutes.
Merci beaucoup, Karen.
Thank you very much, Karen. Hello, ladies. Thank you for being with us today. We knew that there were issues accessing menstrual products and issues with paying for products. But with every testimony that we hear, we realize that reality is much more serious than we thought. I'll start with you, Miss Lara. I spoke to witnesses who are developing reusable menstrual products, and I said to them that there aren't a lot of ads about them, and I thought that it might be because myself and other colleagues are from a different generation, but what parts of the market do you have? Who is purchasing your products? Is it young people who are more likely to purchase your products? If you could just give us an idea of who is interested in those products. With Iris and Arlo, we offer single-use products, tampons. with or without an applicator, day pads, night pads, biodegradable pads as well, because we want people to be able to have choice, but we also have reusable products such as period pads, or period underwear rather. There has been an increase of 15% of the market share for those period underwear, and it's growing. And when we speak to young people who are much more informed on the health issues and environmental issues, there is an interest in such products. And when they have a wide range of options, and when they have their first menstruations, they are able to realize that a menstrual underwear is more comfortable and it is more green, and anxiety related to the environment is very common for young people, and so that is also why they are more interested. So it is important to talk about it, talk about these products, and offering more visibility. School would be a good space for that awareness raising. Yes, but 1 in 4 young people does not know what menstruations are, and 1 in 3 doesn't know how to manage it. And so there is education that is lacking. And over the past year and a half, we've been working at the corporate level in workplaces for menstrual products to be offered. I had CEOs that were really well informed, that are heads of companies, and they asked me how a tampon worked. And so there's education to be done at all levels. Wow. I don't know who will be able to answer me on a slightly complicated question that I'll ask, but I imagine that most of you will have an answer. I think it's Miss Megan who mentioned the Canadian Labour Code. And so employees, federal employees, unless I misunderstood, would have free access to menstrual products. I was a Minister for Labour in Quebec, and it's not something that we examined when we did a review of the code. What I'm getting at is that it's of provincial jurisdiction, and I imagine it's something that my colleague Andréane will raise as well. So what can we do? Because we can talk about this, we can say what is needed in all bathrooms in Quebec and in all businesses, but who should be the leader of this? How do we convince businesses? What can we do? Ms. Foucault? I think that it is a great question. I'll start by saying that it's not only one person who will be a leader. It has to come from all levels, at all jurisdictions. There's space for someone to work within their capacity to create a new standard. There can be legislation so that it is mandated everywhere, but it needs to come from a public perception change, so awareness campaigns. There needs to be initiatives to make products available, for example, like the new legislation, but there needs to be more, so perhaps private businesses who would have a similar initiative so that it would snowball. Do you believe that the business community will change? There is a labor shortage, and there are a lot of women in the labor force. Do you believe that the business world is ready for change? Are they aware? Somebody is going to end up paying for all these changes. Answer, yes, I think so. Because it is the new normal, they will have to be ready, whether it be businesses, schools, municipal institutions. I think that people will have to be ready.
I'm going to pass it over because it is the time of the member, so I'm going to pass it over to Anita Vandenbelt. You have 6 minutes.
Yes, thank you so much, and thank you for this incredible witness panel and for the work that you're doing on menstrual equity. And I'd like to go to sort of the economic arguments for this, because we've talked about the dignity, the rights, the choice, but there's a real economic argument to be made here. One of the things that you mentioned, and I think it was you that mentioned that people are missing work and they're missing school. And then, of course, there's issues, not just physical health, but the shame and the lack of confidence can also lead to, other issues in terms of the rest of their lives being impacted. But also, Ms. White, you mentioned the flip side of that, which is that most of the businesses that are in this sector are led by women. So on the one hand, the product can actually help in terms of economic empowerment of women, but we also have the businesses that are women-led in the entrepreneurship. So I wonder, I'll start with Ms. White on that angle, and then I'll just ask everybody to, in the order that you spoke, to comment on that if you'd like to. Ms. White?
Yeah, thank you so much. So yeah, I think the concept here it draws back, I'm sure, into a lot of other questions. It's creating a circular economy of support, that we are getting as many things done simultaneously, collaboratively as possible. So when each of us, whether we are council members, MPs, working in the nonprofit sector, business folks, or designers of menstrual products yourself, when you identify the need and you see the whole, you must act in every sector across the board. And that's where we're going to find, our really Canadian way here, where we're going to work together collaboratively to solve this problem while supporting industry, while meeting our environmental goals. Like this, it's just so important, the collaboration here. And I can see it in this room that everybody's really keen and ready to do that. So I'll pass to someone else.
It's a real win-win. I'll pass to the Moontime Sisters. I think Ms. Brown and Ms. White.
Yes, of course. Sorry. When it comes to the economic impact, when we look at the high school rate of graduates in northern communities, and we're talking about, on reserve high schools for First Nations, we're also talking about Inuit communities, which are really not brought to this table often, that conversation of northern communities. The high school rate of graduation is quite low. And when Nicole was speaking with the MP, that really kind of started this fire of Moontime Sisters, it was because students were missing school. And so if we look to supplying communities in different regions, high schools, but not only just high schools, we are talking also like other provinces, or sorry, other programs related in the community, you're going to have a higher rate of graduation from female and non-binary two-spirit students. You're going to have more women and two-spirit going to work. Our stats are saying that there is quite a high amount of women and two-spirit people who are missing work because they do not have access to menstrual products. So when we talk about the economic impact, if you're going to allow the entire community to work as a whole, we really do need to be supplying this one barrier that is a very significant barrier, but a very simple fix in terms of just supplying product. When we're talking about jurisdiction, municipalities know what concerns are in their jurisdiction. They're working with shelters, they're funding their shelters. So if we're looking at who is going to be responsible for funding, it really does need to be multidisciplinary here. But at the end of the day, every region knows their region very, very well. They have frontline workers in there. Their social services know exactly what shelters, the numbers that are attending, who is going to need that product. And so, that's a pretty big piece to keep in mind. But when we're looking at First Nation and Inuit communities, we do need to be working with the territorial governments as well and their programs.
Okay, thanks. I'm just going to interrupt right now. I have put the pause on. I have put the clock on pause. We are voting in 28 minutes and 29 seconds. So I'm looking from this committee to allow us to continue and looking to see whether we want to go this way or whether we need to go upstairs to vote. If we can get everybody wishing to vote via this, I just have to look because the reason I'm asking is looking at the timing. We'd be voting. Okay, sorry, I just really looking at the clock. We've got 28 minutes, so that means within 24 minutes we'll have to stop. Okay, kind of thing. But then looking at coming back to this room, the meeting today is done at 5:30. We're voting at 5:15, meaning there would not be time to come back. So I just want to put that to everybody's suggestion.
You have 27 minutes, and then you have another 5 minutes to vote.
27, yeah, no, we have 10, yes. But I'm saying that it's up to us. So let's continue on this conversation, but the idea is when we go up to vote, let's finish this meeting in 23 minutes, okay? That will give everybody 4 minutes if they wish to go upstairs, or 4 minutes if they do that, and then go from that. 24 minutes left, okay?
Left, Madam Chair?
You have 55 seconds. We won't be coming
How
back
many
because there will not be the
5
time.
seconds?
Well, let's see if people are staying in the room or not, okay? So we should. Go ahead.
So in 1 minute or less, I saw a lot of nodding in the room. So if you guys would like to comment on that.
Yeah, I guess I can go quickly. I think it comes back a lot to the opportunity costs, losing education, not being able to go to school. And I think we also have to think about health policies, right? We severely underfund women's health research. And so you have people with endometriosis or other menstruation-related illnesses who are having their period for like 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And so we're not talking about 2 or 3 days every now and again, right? We're talking about a chronic illness. And so the amount of work that people are missing, the amount of school that people are missing, and the activities that people are missing, and when they're out, not feeling like they can fully participate because of that. And 1 in 10 women have endometriosis. And there's a bunch of other related things that give people a hard time when they're menstruating. And so when we talk about periods and why people are missing these opportunities and why the economy gets tied up in that, we really need to be thinking about this as well. And social corporations, enterprises in Canada have been a huge supporter of Monthly Dignity. We fully exist off of the donations from companies that are based in Canada, many of them run by women.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. We're going to now turn it over to Audrey LaRoche for 6 minutes.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you to all the witnesses for being with us today to destigmatize this issue that is still very taboo in 2023. Just to come back to what my colleague Dominique mentioned, I was the head of a group called Ecosphere that proposed green changes. We met with transportation groups and talked about electric vehicles, and we talked about green construction and renovation, and for green fashion, as well as for biocosmetics or green cosmetics. And we were also talking about reusable period products, and we're also talking about plastic-free products, even though they're single use. So it is important to think about the environment, and what the federal government could do would be focus on research, for example, and they could invest in medical research and on solutions on sustainable and reusable products, and to work on the environmental impact of these products. And because everyone talked about the reusable products, I would ask any of the witnesses to answer.
Si je peux me permettre.
I'll start. It would make sense to invest in research. Not enough is done in Canada, whether it be on the materials or on the development of new materials. And if we want to be more competitive as well, studies need to be done. and also to reduce the purchasing price of menstrual products, Canada is not competitive enough for IP, and so for health as well. As my colleagues mentioned, there's very few research done on feminine health or on the health of people who have a uterus. And also, for legislation, there are still gaps. Studies support that there are a lot of pesticides, dioxins in menstrual products, and that has an impact on the health of people who menstruate and who use these products. And we cannot yet quantify the impact on health, and so on the health system as well, and on the environment in Canada. We could examine, for example, cigarettes. There wasn't a lot of research years ago. Now, studies were done, research was done, it's been regulated, and I think that we should do the same for menstruation in Canada. Thank you. Clara or Haley, do you have anything to add? I completely agree. But for data that's lacking on menstrual health is that there's not a lot of data on period poverty. We don't know what the impact is on these people. So for research, it would make sense to focus on something like that. Yes, on health and products, but also on period poverty. That's where we see the importance of having data in science for developing new technology. And with the lack of research on feminine health, my colleague Luc Thériault could tell you a lot about this. And there are studies on breast implants and illnesses that mostly impact women receive less investment. And with reusable products, there are businesses that work to sell in bulk. There's a company in Quebec, and they have a store that is absolutely great, and they offer reusable products. So congratulations to that company, Orange Coco. And when we talk about menstrual equity, there are a lot of initiatives in Quebec. So perhaps a solution would be to increase health transfers to Quebec. The government of Quebec has a study on menstrual access led by a department on women in Quebec. And so we believe that increasing these health transfers could help these kinds of initiatives that Quebec and other provinces and municipalities are focusing on. I don't know if any of you have any comments on that. I could try to answer. My answer is yes. I do believe that it could help, but it wouldn't be the only solution. It needs to come from everywhere. For example, if people don't have access to health services because of certain barriers, they wouldn't have more access to menstrual products. So yes, it can be helpful, but there needs to be other elements to the solution as well. So your time is up.
Okay, and now we're going to go online. Benita, you have the floor for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just want to thank the witnesses for such an important testimony that we're hearing today. Outside of the product that we know is so important, there's been discussions today around the impacts in public life, the impact of the ability to earn an income, the impact of the ability to take part in public life. So my questions are for starting with Ayla Banks. You spoke, you said the words achieve health, growth, and success. And I think for this study, there's an opportunity to have recommendations from testimony. So I wonder if you wouldn't mind sharing, how does not having access to this product, going through the stigma, how does it affect opportunities? What are the opportunity costs? And how does it affect longitudinal over a lifetime? And how can we make changes at the federal level to make it better?
Yeah, thank you. I would say The impact alone on just the simple nature of just going to work in clean clothing and making a living, just a simple thing like that, is so impacted by this lack of access. I've seen folks lose their jobs on the regular because of either having accidents at work, which is a reality everybody experiences, and not having a solution for that. To just not being able to go to work. And as it was said earlier, people experience menstruation for more than sometimes just a week, a month. So that could actually impact folks being able to work long term, but that wouldn't make them qualify for disability, for example, which would help supplement income. So the constant starting and stopping of attempting to get back in the workforce is really impeded by not having access to any sort of menstrual supplies. Even if workplaces just had them provided across the board, that would make an impact, but also in terms of the stigma that already exists, folks having access to them before they go to work in the first place so they can be prepared would make a huge difference. So access across the board, not just in workplaces, like for more places, and for folks not just to identify as female, I think would be another big one, because it is a danger factor for a lot of folks to have to out themselves in workplaces if they are male presenting or something like that. If that answers your question.
Yeah, that's great. And thank you so much for talking about the ability to earn an income in the workforce. And there's a petition right now. I'm sponsoring a petition around a community group that's interested in the ability to have, you mentioned having, is it as a disability that you might need more days a month or to assist. This is around having work days given to those that can't necessarily, the pain is too much or the inability to, it can make them very, very ill throughout the cycle. So I just wonder if you could share a little bit around if you've had any experience of folks that are not able to physically go to work because of the pain or the experiences they have during their cycle.
I mean, another big thing that would be really helpful is just education alone. I see a lot of people who don't understand that they are experiencing something that is not a regular occurrence, such as endometriosis, PMDD, things like that. That language and those diagnoses don't often exist for folks in the first place, let alone once they do know that they have this, the stigma and taboos often take away from anybody taking it seriously enough to qualify for any sort of supported work environment for those kind of experiences and those kind of extreme pain or other side effect situations. I mean, I was only talking about just the bleeding alone, but yeah, the pain factors, the behavioral changes, all of those, there's just not a lot of education, especially if you come from maybe a less educated or a lack of education in your background as well. So knowing about that, but then also having the follow-up of it being taken seriously and accessible for people to be able to work around that to work.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for that. I just wanted to move over to the Moontime Sisters because I did want to just talk a little bit about teenagers, young people, and some of the effects that do come alongside menstruation, whereas it's like migraines or pain or being ill, like throwing up, all of those things where there isn't necessarily a lot of education around it and a lot of stigma of not being able to share that. So I just wonder if you could share a little bit about the impacts for young people of the stigma and of the missing education piece and how we can correct it.
Go for it, Nicole.
Yeah, we absolutely. I know Veronica's done a lot more in regards to pain care and sending hot water bottles up and that type of thing. So access to sort of those basic pieces that we sometimes take for granted. And we absolutely hear from folks that is a limiting factor. I think I just, Yeah, I want to answer some of the other questions that have gone on in the room, but I want to throw it to Veronica at this point.
In our research study, we did actually ask about access to pain relief because that is something that we would like to know about. Not only are menstruators missing school and work and exercise because of lack of access, but also this could be because of lack of access to pain relief. So we have after a couple of years of doing this work, we did get in request for some pain relief. So we do send up hot water bottles and heating pads. Microwavable bean bags are often a little bit too heavy. Sorry.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to start. What we're doing is we are coming down to the last few minutes before the vote. So as I'm looking at this and kind of reading the room, just to give you an idea, what I'm going to do is 4 minutes, 4 minutes, 2 minutes, 2 minutes. Okay. We will be closing the off at the beginning, so at 5:15, so that those who need to vote can go and vote, and then we'll be done for the day if that's okay. And 5:30 will be our end time, so rather than coming back. So we'll adjourn at the time that the vote starts then. So I'm going to start off with the first 4 minutes to Michelle Frary. Michelle?
Thanks, Ms. Chair, and thank you all for being here today. Really appreciate your time and insight and the work that you do for a lot of the most vulnerable. Education, I think, would probably be my most interest, my biggest interest, because I think it's a big piece of kids, who maybe just don't have the access to somebody who can help them or give them that guidance. I'm curious. There's two questions I have. I'm curious from each of you where education falls in terms of how do you integrate that in, how do you reach the people that need it most if you don't even know where they are, kind of thing. And secondly, how are you each funded? I'm very curious on that. So if I could open the floor and let everybody take a chance to answer that.
Yeah, I can start out if that's okay, because the education piece is so important to me as well. So the most success we've found of the different models that we've tried over the last 5 years is peer-to-peer, without a doubt. So that is gathering other young people who are leaders in their community or have an interest in communications, in drama, in the arts, and who want to use those skills through mentorship from the adults in the organization, and then take that back to their own institutions and share the information that way. They're provided with a tremendous amount of literature, training, and then they can go off into their own communities and speak on a peer-to-peer level, young person to young person, to supplement what I will have to say is inadequate puberty education in these systems. So I find that extremely complementary to an alternative of having a bigger conversation about correcting.
Sorry, I'm going to jump in.
Education.
I'm just going to ask a quick question because it comes to my mind because I think as you speak, is there any like apps or social media platforms you're using to reach these young girls? Because I would think that may be a really useful tool.
Yeah, definitely. We were using YouTube. So they were creating a YouTube channel. And again, it's really excellent because of co-creating skills and leading them. Most of them were between the ages of 12 and 17. So creating YouTube so that they can share those channels with other folks. And it's just them talking about periods to other people their age, informed by research that's been done in that space. So YouTube has been a very helpful model for us as well.
I see.
Go ahead just quickly about how we're funded.
Yes.
First of all, we're not really funded, so $0. We function almost exclusively on in-kind donations from companies and from the community. So a high school recently did a fundraiser for us, and that's the most money we've taken in this year, as opposed to government funding from private foundations or anything like that. So we operate purely on in-kind donations. Yes.
So this pilot program that's coming from the federal government of the $25 million, will you be able to apply for that? Are you eligible?
We haven't quite been informed about the eligibility criteria. We are on the eligible list. We don't have registered charity status, but we are a registered nonprofit. And so that's a barrier for a lot of grassroots organizations because the process to get that status is very expensive. I can speak a little bit to education, if that would be helpful. So education is something that we're expanding our portfolio on right now. I also work with an organization, Free Periods Canada, out in BC, and we're working on a publicly available menstrual health course. So we're doing a scoping examination of everything that's happening in each province. And as I've looked through each province's curriculum for sex ed, it kind of stops and starts in grade 4 and 5. Understand the process of menstruation, done, end of sentence. Don't understand what level of pain is normal. Don't understand what products are available to you and what you're allowed to use. Don't understand that you can talk about your period and your needs.
Thank you so much. We're now going to move it over to Jenna Suds. Jenna, 4 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to all of our witnesses for joining us today and the incredible work that you're all doing. I'd like to perhaps start with Moontime Sisters online, if I may. And one of the questions that I've been asking through the consultations that I've been doing on the Menstrual Equity Fund is who are you not able to reach in the services that you're providing? Because ultimately it is those people that are hardest to reach that we want to ensure get the support that they need. So perhaps I'll start, as I mentioned, I'm not sure, Veronica or Nicole, whoever would like to answer who you're not able to reach.
Oh gosh, there's a lot of people we're not currently reaching. I think a lot of our work is by word of mouth, through presentations, through partnerships with labor. And it is absolutely, we need to do deeper work to get the word out there that we're here to support you. So there are tons of communities we have not sent product to. And I see, obviously, hoping that a funding will come our way to sort of build our capacity to strengthen our reach. Veronica?
I think one limitation that we really have is communities that do not have access to internet. So we found this when we were doing our survey, because it was an online survey. So that is a limitation of our data. But it is also a limitation of our request form. So when we're requesting, when a community is requesting items, they have to do it via online. For those communities that don't have access to internet, this is a very huge barrier. And so sometimes we will have community members that work in remote communities do a request form for those communities that they work in. But going into smaller remote communities that do not have access to stores, food banks, dollar stores, Red Cross, things like that, we are definitely really trying to move into those communities. So working with the Nunavut government, we've partnered with them, their sexual health program, as well as our education ministry, to help really pinpoint some of those smaller communities that have zero access. And internet, we all talk about internet. It's a wonderful thing, but it is definitely a privilege in this country. So it's something that we're working on.
And to add on to it, I think one of the great things that we've been able to do is reach out to a number of band offices, a number of education departments, so they actually can disseminate the product to whatever school's needing it.
Incredible. Thank you very much. And maybe I'll pose the same to Monthly Dignity. Not sure.
Yeah, I can jump in. I think the reality is with programs like ours and many other programs that rely on distribution is that we don't actually know really who we're not reaching. We infer who those people are based on who we have to turn away because we don't have the capacity to say yes to, and who we think aren't able to reach out to us in the first place. And in our case, the reality is that these are probably the most vulnerable or the most underserved communities. Because the size of our organization is quite small at the moment, we're limited to the Montreal region, so we're unable to reach any rural or remote communities or even people in the Montreal suburbs that are a little bit too farther out. So that's one big element. The other population is those who aren't accessing services because they aren't able to. So we rely on these community partnerships to serve clients who access their services. And if people aren't able to access those services because of whatever reason, then there's no way that we're going to be able to reach those folks.
About 15 seconds left.
15 seconds. Okay. Much appreciated. I think that's one of the challenges that many organizations have repeated in the consultations for the Menstrual Equity Fund. And I appreciate it's a hard nut to crack, but it's an important one. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much for all the work you're doing.
Awesome. And we're getting down to we vote in 4 minutes and 5 seconds. So 2 minutes over to Adrienne LaRoche.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Again, thank you to the witnesses for being with us today, and thank you to the witnesses who are online as well. Quickly, I want to examine similar issues that can help with our current study. For example, Lara
we know that we want to eliminate plastic, so could we offer funding to businesses that are working on menstrual products that are either reusable or that are plastic free? In your case, Clara and Haley, I know that you work a lot with volunteers and you're volunteers yourselves. Is your work recognized, or would support be helpful, or working with community organizations and food banks that offer these products? Is that something that would be worth it? Or perhaps the pink tax, that where women's products, because they are pink, are more expensive. This is another reality that has an impact on period poverty. So if I can answer, yes, with eliminating plastic, there are companies that say that they have products that don't have plastics when in fact it is mixed with a small percentage of plastic, so it is not a biodegradable product, and that has an impact on our blue gold in Canada. A quick comment. It is an important thing that you mention. Periods touch so many different issues, the environment, and so we can say there are opportunities for funding.
Move over for our final. I know it gets tight. Final 2 minutes over to Benita online. Benita?
Thank you. And I'm just going to ask 3 of our witnesses today to just give us 30 seconds what they'd like us to have on the record for this report. So if I could ask Monthly Dignity, Moontime Sisters, and then Ayla, each of you to just give us 30 seconds of what you want us to know as you wrap up today. Maybe we could start with Monthly Dignity, then go to Moontime Sisters.
All right. 30 seconds in a community full of a lot of needs. I think what I can say is that what keeps Clara and I up at night is that we are constantly getting new requests for new partners recently, especially over the past year, and it's been like almost on a bi-weekly basis, it feels. We're getting requests and we just can't fill them. We are women, we are doing unpaid care work like all the other women sitting on this panel, to fulfill needs of women who are also doing a lot of unpaid care work. And this cycle is how everything continues, and this cycle is why we see this need growing. And we have to say no. We have to rank needs, and that's messed up. That's messed up. And we need support from the government. We have no government funding. We have like grandparents, high school people's parents. High school students have given us more than the government has. High school students have given us more than private foundations have. And I think we're all just tired of hearing people's stories about using socks when we live in a country where we have a lot of pads. We got a lot of pads and we can figure it out. So I think...
Thank you so much for those comments. Thank you. I'm going to move to Moontime Sisters, please.
10 seconds.
Thank you for this. First of all, Inuit and First Nation Métis communities need to be brought to this conversation 100%. We need to remember that Northern communities exist in this country, that people are living in pretty severe poverty due to colonialism in this country, and we need to address the menstrual inequity that is going on. It is creating another barrier for menstruators that is absolutely not required. We need to be doing better to support Indigenous nations in this country.
Perfect.
We need to have them at the table.
Unfortunately, I do need to cut everybody off. We are down to 0 on the clock, meaning it's time to vote. On behalf of the Status of Women, I would really like to thank all of the incredible witnesses that have come today to bring forward this testimony. A reminder, we'll be meeting on Monday at 11 a.m. to do through the committee business that we didn't get to today. This meeting is adjourned, and have a safe and great weekend.